All set.
All right, I am happy to call the Finance Committee to order, and I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Present.
Vice President Lupien,
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to start with introductory number 1, authorizing administrative tax cancellations and refunds of $1,000 or less for 2022. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Looking for a second, please.
Second.
So moved and seconded. So we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you. Introductory number 2, a bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $19,955,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of improvements to specified city school district schools. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I'll ask a quick question of the administration here. So I think you put in the transmittal that this is all work that is separate from RSMP, which was just approved and will be starting. That's correct, right? This is all completely distinct from RSMP?
Yes, and I'll let the finance director or budget director weigh in. But yes, as you know, council a while back, even predated me, wanted to make it clear that if a school was going to be part of FNP, that no capital dollars would be included as a separate CIP item unless it was something that related to the health and safety of the school. So yes, this is separate and distinct work. Anything, Ms. Jones or Mr. Wagner, you want to add on that?
No, you've said it all. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Great.
Correct.
And then my other question, and hello, Director Jones and Director Wagner. Nice to see you both. My only other question about this is this introductory something that comes up every year in January, or I seem to recall that we do it every year, but is it always this time of year?
Yes, it's an annual request.
And why is it done in January?
I can't answer that.
So I think I can. So this is done in conjunction with the school district CIP process, right? So their CIP comes out with the budget. The timing of their planning for their projects typically starts, in the springtime. So they go to council to get authorization for the borrowing in the winter time, so they know they've got authorization for spending the money, and then they move ahead with the planning and bidding the projects. So that's how the timing is the way it is.
Thank you very much. Do any other members of council have any questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Someone? And I'm sorry, who was the second?
Second, Kim.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. We'll take it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 3, a resolution approving appointments to the Rochester Civil Service Commission. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 4, a resolution approving appointment and reappointment to the Rochester Public Library Board of Trustees. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 5, authorizing agreements and amending the 2021-2022 budget for the Financial Empowerment Center initiative. I'll take any questions, comments, or concerns. I'll just start with a quick point of privilege by asking the administration. I know there's a million things you all are working on as you transition, but would very much like to have a work session scheduled around not just the Financial Empowerment Center specifically, but more broadly the Mayor's Office of Community Wealth Building. Sometime, hopefully, certainly before the budget, we'd like to hear, I think, what's going on and what some of the plans are.
Yes, absolutely. And that's also for our internal team. We're working on something not only for the internal team, but also for council. So yeah, absolutely. You can count on that sooner rather than later, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember,
Yeah, Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
yes, quick question, just for clarity, and it may be something that we may be able to discuss during the work session. But in the responses to our questions, there was a mention of a 600 credit score. And I just wanted to clarify that 600 credit score that was mentioned in the responses is based on the data that came in from who is accessing the services, but is not a requirement or eligibility of someone needing to access the service.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Because the idea is with this, we want to help people increase their credit score. So there is absolutely no requirement for anyone to have a minimum credit score in order to get involved. Because we know the goal is, we want to help people get the ideal credit score that a person should have is really above 675. So how do we help people get there? But no requirement in order for them to be able to participate in that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'll take a motion.
Before we do that, I have to disclose that I'm a member of the Redco board and I am precluded from voting on this item or commenting on it.
Thank you very much. I will take a motion from other members of the Finance Committee, please.
So moved.
Been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Abstain.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 401 into the record with Councilmember Patterson abstaining.
Great. And finally, instructor number 44, a resolution reappointing a marriage officer. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will definitely enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
And congratulations to the clerk.
Thank
If
you.
there's no other business before the Finance Committee, I will adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Councilman Gruber.
All right, at this time, I call the Neighborhood and Business Development Committee to order and I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Smith,
Present.
Vice President Lupian,
Here.
President Scott. I'm sorry. I'm going back. I'm sorry. It'll take me a minute.
It'll take you a
Melendez.
Been that way for a minute.
I know. I'm sorry. President Melendez.
I'm here.
Okay.
All right, introductory number 6, authorizing lease for a portion of 1 Mount Hope Avenue. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Council President Melendez, seconded by Council Member Smith. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
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 All opposed to the item, please say nay. Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 7, authorizing a grant application relating to the CARES Act Community Development Block Grant Funding for the rehabilitation of affordable rental housing. Public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after the January 13th, 2022 committee meeting. Questions, comments, or concerns?
I have some questions and comments.
Council Vice President.
Just follow-up questions on some of the answers that were given in the agenda review packet. There were some concerns around the inspection process, and I'm wondering if it's the same as the process for houses that are sourced through Home Rochester, or if that's a different inspection process.
I'm gonna let Commissioner Miller answer that question. He may direct the question to Director Wheeler, but Commissioner Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, President. The inspection process would be the same process. We inspect all of the properties in the same way.
There we go. So I know that we're scheduling a work session on this, but I will say that, I agree from very personal experience that the inspection process could use some updating. It missed some very serious issues in some properties that I am aware of that were sold through Home Rochester. So I'm very interested to see an update to that process to make sure that when we do the rehabs, that we're doing them effectively. Another question is, we asked around the process of understanding if a property is sold, what happens. And I understand the process, but my question is around how would the city be alerted if the house was sold, if there isn't a lien on it?
Correct. Yes, there is no lien on the property. So we would, if the property is sold, we send out a notification each year asking for the status of the property. If the status came back that the property had been sold, or if there's an indication because we mailed it and let's say the address was incorrect or something, we would then have an inspector verify that the property is still in the same hands. If it is not, then we assume it's sold. And once we know that it has been sold, then if it has been sold in a time frame that exceeds what's allowed, we would seek repayment of any funds.
So it's built around the letter that goes out and whether or not it comes back, but there's no systemic
Correct.
check or reports that are run to see if an owner has changed hands.
No.
Okay, thank you. There was another piece about the income verification for tenants being processed annually. If a tenant refuses to give an income verification statement, do they have to move out? What's the process around that?
That's a good question, Council Vice President. I don't know the answer to that, so I will get an answer back to you before Monday.
And related to that, if they become ineligible, if they have affordable rent for a few years and they move up, do they have to then move out?
If they have affordable rent for a few years and, I'm sorry.
And they become in a better place financially.
They make
to
more money.
no longer, right, exactly.
Right. Actually, I think Carol Wheeler is on the call and she may be able to answer that question. What happens if a tenant's income increases beyond what is considered affordable during their rental period?
At the time of the renewal of the lease, then they would need to seek other, another unit where there may not be income restrictions. But when we do have affordable housing units, there are very specific incomes that are required for those particular units, and they are not able to be exceeded. So in the event that it does happen during the lease term, then they are allowed to stay there. But once the lease is up, then they do need to seek a different unit.
Is that a city policy or is that
That,
mandated by the state?
that is state and federal. It really depends on what the source of the funding is.
So the CARES, it would be the federal.
That is correct.
Okay. Let me see if I get my notes. Okay, so there's if a landlord has a code violation, they're not able to apply for this program. So that would exclude landlords who would be using the program to remedy code violations. Is there anything that would, if there is a code violation, allow the landlord to kind of specifically apply to be able to use the money to remedy those?
So the piece about code violations is a little confusing. There may be property owners who have many properties, and it's often difficult to have all of the code violations corrected on all properties at all times. So if a property owner has a code violation, but they are in good standing, meaning that they are working with the inspectors, they're making progress, they could still apply for the program. And the program would be able to be used for property that is going to use the funding to correct code violations. So again, as long as they're working with us and they're in good standing, we would like to see as many code violations corrected as possible. So we would want this funding to be used to fix code violations.
Wonderful, thank you. My final question, and maybe it's more of a comment, and I think my major concern with this program is that after the 5 years, we're subsidizing landlords to make improvements to their property, which we want. And we're mandating the affordable rent for 5 years. But after that 5 years, I think very few landlords would keep it affordable. And so, it could jump up to market rate because there's no kind of stepped plan to get to market rate from the affordability. And so I see that leading to a lot of displacement in our community. And I wondered if you had comments on that or ideas on how to mitigate that effect.
Well, it's certainly a concern of ours. Our goal, obviously, through this program and all of our programs, is when we establish affordable housing, we would like it to stay affordable for as long as possible. So obviously, things like the Community Land Trust or other ways to ensure affordability are things we would want to support. In a program like this one, we would certainly encourage the property owners, if they have tenants, the tenants are good tenants, they've been there for a long time, and the 5 years is up, we would encourage them to continue to offer affordable rents so that those tenants could remain. But we, as you point out, we would not have any legal ability to enforce that.
Are there any programs that you're considering to subsidize affordable rents for there? I think there was a pilot program in the Susan B. Anthony neighborhood that was able to provide that as kind of a subsidy, because we know that it's difficult to sustain housing right now for landlords and rent affordably. And is there anything that we can do to be able to continue the program, maybe not in the same way, but to be able to extend folks' tenancy so that they don't have to move after 5 years?
We will always look for opportunities for that. The program you described, the Neighbors for Neighborhoods program, was funded by Enterprise Community Partners. It did allow us to require affordability for a longer period of times. But as you pointed out, that program has ended. But we always are looking for other opportunities to provide affordable housing for longer periods of time. So yes, we will continue to investigate ways to make that happen.
Thank you for answering all of my questions. And I look forward to answers to the questions that you were able to answer. And just to explain, I'm going to vote to hold it. It doesn't mean that I don't agree with the program, but just that I want to wait for the rest of the answers. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
No questions on intro 7.
Councilmember Patterson, can I just add one thing to Vice President Lupien?
Well, hang on. I kind of had some questions here myself.
Sure.
So, but I'll definitely get back to you. Commissioner Pending Miller, how many units do you project to serve with these dollars?
With the dollars that we're looking at for the, we're talking about the ARPA funds.
Yes.
We believe that there are approximately 100 properties.
Okay. Councilmember Gruber?
Yes, thank you. I guess I just want to add one thing to the line of questioning that Councilmember Lupien was asking. So, I asked a question in the agenda review about what would prevent us from just having this be a longer term than 5 years, and the response back from administration was nothing necessarily. It just might mean less applicants, and I think that's a fair answer, but it's a question. And I really would love for us to, I think we've been using, round numbers like 5, 10, or 15 years for things for a long time. And maybe that is best practice, but I know that, the Evans administration is going to be very, data forward. You've already made that very clear. I'd love to just explore that a little bit further. Like why is 5 years the answer, but 8 years isn't the answer? And, those are, I think, questions that we really ought to begin to plumb and explore and see what other cities do as well. Because that could be a more simple route at trying to extend the affordability here. We don't have that many tools to do things like this. And I think, to Councilmember Lupien's point, we want to make sure that they last as long as they possibly can.
Right. And just one point, and I'm sure everyone knows that this is just a grant application submission. I hope we get it, but the hope is that we get this grant. So I know that we'll have a lot more time. Hopefully, we can have some time to explore Councilmember Gruber, what you said, and some of the other conversations that we had. So I'm glad that we're biblically they say speak those things that aren't as if they were. So I'm glad that we're acting as if we're going to get this grant, even though we don't have it yet. But I think that all of these are great conversations to have. But the hope is that we get this grant in the first place. But I think these are all definitely things that we can definitely explore. And the commissioner and his team will go back and definitely look at some of these comments that we've heard.
Well, to that point, has the grant been written?
Commissioner?
I think Linda Hedden would have an answer for that. I know we've worked on the grant. I'm not sure if it's completed. Linda?
Well, Mr. Fitz may know.
I can speak to that, Commissioner. Yeah,
Thank you.
so the New York State's process, there's an initial short application and then a consultation with some state staff to go over the proposal, and then they invite us to submit a full application. So we have had that consultation, and we're putting together the final application currently. The draft application is available for review on the website and through our office here in 224B.
When is the application due to the state?
It is a rolling application process.
Okay.
So
Okay. Is there, and Commissioner Miller, last time I'll use pending. What's the anticipated per unit cost for the rehab, roughly? What's your top number?
Right. Well, the current limitation is $20,000 for any of these units. What we're hoping is that through this grant, we can extend that 20,000 beyond that. So it can go there. I mean, there really is no limit, but we're expecting that this would allow us to go as high as perhaps 29 or 30,000, which would give us more flexibility to address more issues in the properties than the typical ones.
Okay. DHCR is the $5 million number DHCR's number, or is that our number to ask for? Is that their number?
It's our number that we're asking for. It's actually the limit, and we're asking for that amount. So.
And within the scope of their application process, do they impose a term, a maximum term for affordability? I know normally they do in some of these things. Do they in this case?
So in the case, so you're asking about the 5-year term that we're
Right.
proposing? Okay.
Right, is that their term or is that our term?
Henry, do you have an answer for that?
That is our term because this is expanding an existing program, the current lead hazard reduction program. So the state has not, we've not gotten to that level of detail with the state yet in terms of if they have additional requirements to impose.
Okay. Can you guys forward over the preliminary application that you guys have completed to all members of council?
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to hold this item for now, and we'll revisit it in the future. Are any other questions, comments, or concerns on introductory number 7?
I'm sorry. So Councilmember Patterson, when you say in the future, do you mean Tuesday or when?
Well, so we've got a rolling application process. So you don't have a drop dead date in the future. There are council members have reasonable and significant questions. I think it's not unreasonable for us to hold the item, get those answers, give council members time to deliberate, and then look at bringing this item back out in the future. Quite honestly and quite frankly, I don't know how we get there with this particular item on Tuesday. But with that being said, I would be shocked or surprised if we wouldn't be able to get it done in the February council.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd like to get it done sooner rather than later because this does affect housing. So, I mean, when we say the future, I'd like to have some type of date. So if we commit to getting the answers to you, in a timely manner, I'd ask respectfully if this could be taken up at least at the February meeting if we get the answers to you by then.
I would hope that we would be able to get this definitely solved by the February meeting. I mean, council members have reasonable and rational questions. There is some opportunity here for it to expand the time frame for affordable housing. I think we can get there. I think it's just a continuing conversation.
Councilor Patterson?
Yeah.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure that we honor our commitment in terms of getting it. I didn't want it to be an open-ended thing. So
No.
for our team, we'll get answers, before the end of the month. So that way in February we can have this. We can
maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to look at working collaboratively with your staff and our staff to move around our work sessions, have a work session sooner rather than later on this particular item, so we can address these issues and concerns so that when we get to February, we can move in a way that makes sense.
Councilmember Patterson, may I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Thanks. I just, I've sadly had to spend a long part of my career in the world of grant writing. And I would hope that the administration would tell this council if holding it for a month is going to harm our chances to getting it. There's obviously a finite pool of money that the state looks like they're trying to spend. And although I do have questions and I do think there are things that I'd like to see refined and done differently, I also do not want to risk the chance of us losing an opportunity to get state and federal dollars because we're trying to refine this too much. So I hear what Councilmember Chair Patterson said. I would just hope the administration would share if this is going to hurt our chances of getting the grant.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Gruber. That was actually going to be my next comment that, as we all know, grants are grants. There is a limited amount of grant money, and the sooner you apply for it, the better your chances are of receiving it, and your better chances of being in the pool of people who do receive grant money before it runs out. So it's critical that we do this. I'm hopeful that if we can get answers back to the council, over the next couple of days, that you might be willing to consider it at the meeting on Tuesday And if you don't have the answers that you need, then if we have to wait a month, we can. But clearly, deferring any action on this beyond a month is probably going to impact our chances at receiving this, and even deferring it to February may have some impact on us being able to receive this funding. So.
Okay.
Chairperson Patterson, I'm sorry, I just need a point of clarification. There were a lot of questions and a lot of answers. I have captured one unanswered question from Council Vice President Lupian, which is if they refuse to verify income, do they have to move out? So if you're now saying there are other questions unanswered, I would need to know what those questions are.
So sure, let me go through them briefly as I heard them. So there was a question regarding the term of the affordability, whether or not that was fixed or whether or not that was open, whether or not that
Correct, but that was answered. So I guess, is this more of a discussion that you want, or?
Well, no, well, that's funny because I didn't think it was answered. Quite frankly, I heard that, that was a term that was set by the city. It sounds as though council members may well want a longer term. So that is a question. So is the question,
can we have a longer term and what could it be? I just want to make sure I capture them all.
Yes, the answer is we've proposed 5 years.
Right.
And the question was, does it have to be 5 years? And is there an opportunity to have it be longer than 5 years? There was no recommendation on how much longer than 5 years.
Right.
But there was a comment, well, could it be 8? Could it be longer? So
right.
Correct. But
So
the answer is yes, you can have a longer term. That's why I'm just trying to.
Well, excuse me. Wait a minute. So, but the point is, quite frankly, it sounds as though council members want a longer term.
correct.
So it sounds as though we need to have a conversation between the administration and council on what that longer term is. So that's one of the reasons why I'm holding it. There were, and that's quite frankly enough. We can crowdsource amongst ourselves what the other issues are and concerns are. The reason why I asked if there was a closing date for this, and the answer was no, there isn't a closing date. This is an open-ended thing. Okay, well, it's open-ended. So another question for you is, when were you made aware of the funding opportunity?
Carol Wheeler, I believe, can speak best to that.
We were made aware of this opportunity roughly about 30 days ago.
Okay.
And
So look,
pardon?
so I just to get clarity, because again, this is just a grant application, and I know that we're spending a lot of time here. I want to know what the commitment is for my administration to get back to you in order to do this. So if it's the desire of council to hold this into February and risk us not getting the grant, I'm fine with that, but I just need clarity on what our marching orders are. So if we get answers,
I can be clear. I can be clear on what my request is.
okay,
So,
please.
So my request is very simple. So yeah, I get it. You want to do it on Tuesday with the grant application, but I don't know how as a body we say, yeah, go ahead and do the grant application, and we still have questions regarding what the actual grant application is going to be. So to Corporation Council, if we approve this on Tuesday, do we still have an opportunity to suggest and encourage changes of the administration? And is the administration required to follow through with those recommendations?
You're on mute, Linda.
If you approve it on Tuesday and there is clarification of things you still want us to look at, and the administration commits to doing that, I don't see why that is a problem. You can, if there are clarifications you actually want to put in the ordinance, you can put them in the ordinance. But if time is of the essence, then passing it on Tuesday is what should be the goal.
So quite frankly, everybody was, so we found out about it 30 days ago. We got it now. we're looking at. I get it, we're moving on an expedited schedule, but at the same time, it's not unreasonable for us to have questions, to seek answers, to find solutions, and to move forward. I understand that there is some risk in doing that, but there's risk in doing everything. So if you can get us some answers and we can get to somewhere in this committee and on this body by Tuesday, well, God bless you, we're going to do it. But if we ain't there, then we'll work to get there by February. And we are aware of the risk. So we're just doing our work, folks. It ain't nothing, we ain't doing nothing crazy. We don't need to get tight. We just need to move on. We're going to hold it. We're going to work on it. We're going to get it done. We all are, everybody here is in favor of affordable housing. Okay, so there's nobody here anti-affordable housing. We're going to get it done. But we are a deliberative body. We have an obligation to do this work in a particular type of way. I, as a chair, listen to what council members say, and it's like, hey, we got questions, we got concerns. So we're going to hold the item today. Y'all get that stuff over to us tomorrow. We'll read it over the weekend. We'll talk again on Monday. We'll see what we can do on Tuesday. That's the work.
Okay, and that's fair. And we will get you answers for the questions and look forward to having this at least be considered for action on Tuesday. And if so, then great. And if not, then, we will keep plugging away. Thank you.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So we're holding 7. That's that one. Introductory number 8, authorizing the extension of payment in lieu of tax agreements for qualifying affordable housing projects. Councilmember Smith, I know you must have some questions here.
I have a few. I guess I'll start with, so I received the list of the 80 pilot agreement properties. There were 2, Midtown Manor and Southeast Towers, within that list of 80 that did not have expiration dates. And so coincidentally, I am hearing a lot of complaints where the community refers to those 2 properties as Manhattan Square. And coincidentally, there are a lot of complaints from tenants coming out of Manhattan Square. So number 1, why are there no expiration dates only for those 2 properties? And is there a direct correlation between not having a direct expiration date and lots of communities' complaints coming out of there?
Thank you, council member. So of the 2 properties that you talked about, the property that is now called Southeast Towers was previously called Manhattan Square. It is no longer called that, and it is undergoing a major rehabilitation project right now, and the entire building is being completely redone. In the process of doing that, some tenants had to be relocated. The way the building is constructed, the renovation could not go floor by floor, but actually had to go quadrant by quadrant through all of the floors because of the way the plumbing and utilities are constructed in that building. So there have been a number of complaints through this whole process by tenants. We have worked very hard with the construction company and with the project owner to have those complaints dealt with as quickly as possible. Whenever tenants have raised questions, folks have gone over there and met with them to address those concerns. So Southeast Towers is a project that is still a work in progress. The first half of your question is, why does it not have an expiration date? I would ask if Linda has an answer on why it is listed with no expiration date, because I don't know the answer to that.
Apologize that there was confusion as a result. That was one of 2 properties that there was an asterisk for, and the information at the bottom of the table indicated that the expiration was concurrent with existing mortgage, but that did not have a date. The city does have an outstanding loan on Southeast Tower, and I'm I know it ties to the rehab that is being completed. And once it is completed, it will transition permanent. And at that time, the end date will be able to be assigned. During the time that it's under construction, it's continuing, but it's not specified. If they complete the construction sooner, so before the end of this calendar year, it would be 30 to 50 years out from that date. If it doesn't complete until 2023, it would be 30 to 50 years past that date. I'm saying that because I don't know personally what that particular pilot agreement says.
So because the project is currently under construction, it is currently under construction financing, which is not permanent financing. It's temporary financing to complete the construction. Once the construction is completed, it converts from temporary to permanent financing, and that permanent financing period could be anywhere between 30 to 50 years, depending on the financing that they're able to acquire at that point. But whatever point that happens and whatever that time frame is, would be set at that time.
Right. So do we know how many tenants have been displaced and to where? And is there some type of comprehensive compilation of the list of tenant complaints and who has responded to them?
The tenants that were displaced were not displaced off the premises. They were displaced to other units within the premises. So they were not moved in a very, very far distance away. They were moved into other units that they had on the premises that were open but had not yet been rehabbed. And then when the rehabs were completed, they were moved back into the tenant, the normal units. The complaints have been collected by the owners of the property and have been addressed by the owners of the property. There is also a tenant association that has been working with the owners to review the complaints and to find ways to address them. Many of the complaints have been complaints about odors during the construction or smells. Obviously, during the construction process, there are industrial adhesives and other things to hold floors down or put walls up. And people have raised concerns about those. To some extent, fans or other ventilation have been ways of trying to address that, but unfortunately, you can't completely eliminate that. And to the best of everyone's knowledge, those are not dangerous. They may be something that people would find objectionable, but they do not cause any harm.
So it is my understanding that at least one of those tenants was hospitalized. I would need to look into that further, but I just can in good faith. I want to see Intro 8 passed because affordable housing, as Councilman Patterson mentioned, is extremely important, and I wouldn't want to hold it up for two properties, but I just need a better understanding of what is happening within those two properties, and to justify going into agreement with them for anything.
Can we make sure that we follow up with Councilmember Smith's questions related to those two properties?
Yeah.
Before Tuesday, to make sure that she gets answers on those, please. And it may be.
The two questions. The one question was, who is tracking the complaints and how are they being addressed? Is that?
Certainly.
Okay.
I have two questions.
Thanks, and we'll get those answers to you, Councilmember Smith.
If
I appreciate that, Mayor and Mr. Miller. Thank you.
Thank you.
may, I
Council
just
Vice President.
helpful. All of the properties listed as having pilots are subject to existing pilots through the dates identified. The two properties that were asked about also have existing pilots. The likelihood of their extension is at the end of those terms. And we can clarify when those are likely to be.
So before we get to you, Council Vice President, just a point of clarification, if you can address it there, Commissioner Miller. At the presentation that Mr. Zaza gave, it was stressed to us that this is a matter of urgency. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, you're talking about approving the pilot? Yes,
Yes.
yes, Mike Zazara presented to us, yes. It was presented as a matter of urgency because for the properties that have pilots expiring, the taxable status date for all properties in the city is February 1st. So if this is not approved in time for us to put these in place for properties, then they will not be able to have the new pilots in place, and they will revert to the normal tax structure on that February 1st taxable status date.
Okay.
So that is the matter of urgency, that we could lose the pilot agreements on some of these properties, which would then result in the owners being unable to maintain the affordable rents.
Okay. So that's part of it. And also, and so there is no opportunity for disaggregating these properties from this agreement. They all need to happen now.
The properties that are subject to potentially being able to benefit from the pilots continuing is the small group of 6 that are listed in the responses to council. The other list was providing council with the whole group of properties that are subject to qualifying pilots.
Okay. So what we are voting on then is dealing with the properties that for the 6 properties specifically that we're dealing with that are of immediate concern now. That's what the legislation addresses. The other properties fall outside of that, but these issues can be addressed as we go forward. But it is important that we address this now for these 6 particular properties.
That is correct, Councilmember Patterson. Yes.
Right.
Councilmember Patterson, if we were looking at just those 6, I think that I would be ready to vote on that today.
Well, and so from what I'm hearing from the administration that is exactly what we're working on. We're working on those 6 today. So that's what we're looking at. Sounds like we need to vote on that. Let's vote that out of committee.
Can I ask my question?
I'm sorry, Council Vice President Lupien. Yes, please.
How did it come to be that there was a pilot that was at a different length than the required affordability term?
The required affordability terms have changed over time. And there have been many different practices over the years. There's initial financing of projects and loans associated with that. And oftentimes the original pilots were the same length as the initial financing. New York State has had minimum 30-year affordability periods dating back to the 90s or earlier. They have extended to up to 50 years for new units and 40 years for sustaining affordable units. And so what we have is a difference between what the original pilot that was approved and the period of time that the property itself is subject to all of these requirements and the provision of affordable housing through those terms. So they're still obligated to perform their duties and provide affordable housing through the state-related agreement terms. Our pilots, in a number of cases, are shorter than that. And what we're requesting is the opportunity, but not the requirement, to be able to extend those in situations where the administration believes that it is a good way to continue to make sure that there is affordable, decent, safe housing.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my next follow-up question is we there is a decision point at which the city gets to decide whether or not to extend. And my question is that something that comes to council, or is that an administration decision?
Up until now, and actually the next introductory before you is an example of what has to happen currently. And that is that in each particular case, there has to be an application made. There needs to be preparation of a submission to the pilot review committee. And they need to deliberate, make a recommendation, and we need to request from city council the ability to do that. In situations where it is the continuation of affordable housing, those sort of things take a good amount of staff time. It also requires a process by the property owners to do this. And the thought is that we could streamline and continue to guarantee the continued provision of affordable housing in a way that helps our partners who are providing this housing to be able to continue to do that job.
So we have an existing process of which to extend the pilots. It's just labor intensive and takes time.
It's
Right.
labor intensive, it takes time, and the alternate to not extending pilots is another process that's described that also is labor intensive and takes time.
And so for these these 6 properties, were they not able to complete that process in time, or did they anticipate that this legislation was coming through?
They may have submitted a 581A application for this year. I can't speak to that. We would have to defer to assessment for that. Our thought is, if there's a way to streamline the work of both the administration and council for something that we hope there is agreement upon, the continued provision of affordable housing, then let's see if we can propose something that would be acceptable.
That makes sense. One word that you mentioned was guaranteed. And so if there is a decision point that the administration gets to decide whether or not to extend the pilot, then that's not really a guarantee, but it's likely.
That's
Correct?
probably a better way to put it, yes. The intention to continue, they do have obligations to the state for a specified period of time.
Okay. And even though they don't have to fill out the whole application, it's still not a decision point where it comes back to council.
That is what is being proposed.
Okay. And then my final question is around inspection. You know, a lot of these pilots will be reauthorized well into its period. And, you know, if history serves, sometimes those buildings start to degrade. And so if we're going to be reauthorizing the pilots, I'd like to understand the criteria of which these buildings will be evaluated. If it's just, you know, the code inspector process, the normal process, or if there's heightened scrutiny now that we're going to be reissuing the pilot.
It would still be the inspection process that we have. They'd still have to require and be, maintaining a current C of O. So we would still go through the C of O process for projects of the size that we're talking about. It's typically a process that would take place every 3 years. So we would continue to do that. That's not going to change. It is much more difficult, as you obviously can imagine, to inspect, a unit, a building that has, many, many units in it than it is to inspect a 1 or 2 family unit. So we would have to be more diligent about inspecting, and it becomes, as opposed to, a fairly straightforward process. It's a much more labor intensive process, but we would do that.
Does the,
New York State also periodically inspects.
right. Well, we know sometimes that process breaks down. I'm gonna get confused because we've been talking about Southeast Towers. Is it Southview that's on South Ave that had so many problems?
Yes.
Maybe so that was a property that was getting inspected and had, help from the state in order to maintain, and didn't live up to the standards. And so I guess I'm concerned that it doesn't come back to council. And from the past, not be able to really guarantee that it's living up to the standards that we would like to see for affordable housing. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. And maybe I'd like to understand if the 6 properties have, if you could tell council if they've submitted the required paperwork to have the pilot extended, and what process they're currently in.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that, because I think we were headed down a road, and I think we hit a fork, and I think we got slightly off track. So I just want to try to make sure that we're clear here. We were asked a question about properties, and the answer to the question was that there were up to 80 agreements that are currently in existence, but only 6 would be impacted right now if this is not approved. And those are the 6 that you see on the list. But the item that is before you is to approve this process going forward for all properties, not just those 6.
Oh,
So-
right. But I think the urgency is around those 6.
Confused a little bit there. And I just want to make sure we came back on track. So
Yeah,
the
thank you for-
process here would change this process for all properties going forward. The ones that would be most immediately impacted are these 6 because they are expiring now or have expired already. And if they've expired already or are expiring now, then they need to be addressed prior to February 1st, or they will no longer be on a pilot, and they will have to go through the more intensive process that was described and have to complete that before February 1st. So,
Well, I guess my question is, if they didn't know that this legislation was coming,
then they would have already started the process.
right? And so my question is, in terms of the urgency around this item, can you tell me if these 6 properties have started the process where they're at? Because I would like to think that they were on top of what they needed to do in order to have the paperwork filled out by February.
So the answer to that question is we will ask assessment, Mike Zazara, whether or not these 6 properties have started anything toward the process or not, because you're correct. I mean, this item could pass or it could not. If it doesn't and they haven't started the process, then they have a problem. So
Thank you.
we will get an answer from assessment on that.
I believe Chairperson Patterson is frozen.
He's not moving very quickly, so
No.
it's entirely possible.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear
Yes.
you, yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, so look. There is since February 1st is the issue and the problem for these particular 6 properties. I think we could have an ongoing conversation about the entire pilot process and what we do and how we do in this building and that building. And I think those are conversations for the future. I believe that we should vote on this item now, see if we can get this moved out. And it is my hope that folks would be willing to give the administration some deference as it pertains to this particular item and these particular properties. We can still have a conversation. I'm sure that Katie and Josanna have captured the concerns, and we can get back and address these and have a much longer and more in-depth conversation with the administration. But I would also remind folks that this is a new administration. So we are literally voting on items that were submitted by the last mayor, okay, and by Mayor Smith. That's by Mayor Evans. So I would hope that we would be able to move on this item, that we'd be able to vote this item out. Is there anyone who
Sure.
just is absolutely opposed to doing the work on this
Sure.
item right now?
Chair Patterson, I'd like to get the answer to my question, because the urgency really is around these 6 properties. And if they already are in the process, anticipating that this deadline was coming, I'd like to take a little more time before we give up our authority to reauthorize a pilot. You know, when buildings aren't keeping up to the standard, you know, we're accountable to the people, and that's a leverage. That's a leverage point that we have. And you know, I could think of ways that we could streamline and still come before council. So I still have some questions, and I think the crux of the issue is around these 6 properties.
Well, but at the same time, with some of the challenges that you brought up around the other properties, we compelled and found funding and made repairs within that scope. So I understand your concerns, but I don't think we're giving up anything in approving this item now, getting this work done and moving along. But what I will do is, because you have asked some questions, it is my hope that we will be able to move this out of committee Tuesday. And it is my hope that the administration will be able to get us those answers in a timely manner. And then we can work on voting these items out of committee Tuesday and moving forward from there. Okay, so we're holding 8.
Thank you.
Let's get on introductory number 9. Introductory number 9, amending ordinance number 96-9 and extending the term of the payment in lieu of taxes agreement for the Woodward Affordable Housing Project. Oh, please, administration, speak to this item, since it more or less goes directly to what we're talking about.
This is
Okay.
one.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello? I'm not sure I caught the whole question, council member, but did anybody else understand the question? Because I didn't. But.
Yes, I believe the question was on introductory number 9, if the administration could speak to the.
We've just spent, long story short, we just spent 8 days talking number 8.
Okay, well, I think I can probably address the question. So item 8, as we discussed, would solve this problem for all properties.
Can you hear me?
I can hear. Okay, well, you just disappeared. So item 8 would address this issue for all properties with pilots that are affordable going forward. Item 9 is specifically just for Woodward Affordable Housing Project. I mean, technically, if you approve 8, then 9 would be unnecessary. But because of the urgency with 9, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for council to approve this just for Woodward in the event that there was some holdup with the item previous, number 8. So this specifically 9 deals with the 23 affordable units at Woodward. And this would allow us to approve the pilot agreement for that set of units. So that's really the ask with 9. And there were some questions. We did respond to those. And would you be looking for additional questions at this point, Council Chair?
I don't have any other questions. It seems as though Council members Smith and Council Vice President Lupien, do you have any issues or concerns with this particular item as currently presented?
I do not.
My only question would be, are there any concerns that we know of in terms of habitability with the property?
And that was one of the questions that we received, and we did respond that there are no open code violation cases for any of the properties included in the Woodward Affordable Housing Project at this time.
Good.
All right, any other questions or concerns for this item? This introductory? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Council President Melendez. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
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 All opposed to the item, please say nay. Introductory passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 10, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of 10-10.5 Jones Avenue. Public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. Well, sometime tonight, after the January 13th, 2022 committee meeting. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Moved by President Melendez, seconded by Councilmember Smith. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the item, please say nay. Introductory passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 11, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Merchants Road. Public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after the January 13th, 2022 meeting. Council Vice President Lupien, questions, comments, or concerns?
I probably do, but I will be honest in that I didn't get to really read through all of the comments on this one. I can imagine that some of my constituents will have concerns, and I'm going to take the time after this meeting to go through them.
Are you opposed to moving the item forward, Council Vice President?
Not at this time.
All right. In that case, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by by President Melendez. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
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 All opposed to the item, please say nay. Item introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 12, amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of 350 Benton Street. Public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after the January 13th, 2022 committee's meeting. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by President Melendez. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
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 All opposed to the introductory, please say nay. Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 45, amending the municipal code with respect to elevators, escalators, and other conveyances. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
President Melendez, seconded by Councilmember Smith. And now we vote. All in favor of the item? Introductory,
Aye.
please. Say
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 46, local law discontinuing the elevator examining board. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Moved by President Melendez, seconded by Councilmember Smith. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the introductory, please say nay. Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Thank you.
You're
A
welcome.
comment before we close. I find it disheartening and shocking that I am sitting in my desk in City Hall on my city laptop and the internet keeps flickering in and out. I don't understand how that happens. So if we can get that addressed with IT, that would be really nice. At this time, with there being no other business before us, this committee stands adjourned.
Woo, all right. I am calling the Parks and Public Works Committee to order, and I ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Pio.
Here.
Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Present, ma'am.
Vice President Lupien.
Present.
President Melendez.
Here.
I got it right that time.
All right, appreciate you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Introductory number 13, appropriating federal highway administration, Marchicelli Aid and American Rescue Plan Act funds and authorizing an agreement relating to the State Street reconstruction project. Do I have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Questions?
Yes, and Patterson, sorry, Councilmember Patterson.
No worries. No worries. All right, so look, there's 1.4 million for resident project services representation city's going to be doing. What is the plan for hiring city staff? Sorry, what is the plan for hiring city residents to do that inspection work? You can send that email in. You don't need to answer today.
Noted. Thank you,
Right.
council member.
We've captured it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Move it, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Peter, just one comment.
Yes, Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you. Commissioner pending Perrin, just a note as the former chair of this committee, this was when this went through the first couple of times, this had a lot of input from the community around the connectivity of the bicycle lanes on State Street and the fact that this is a particularly high trafficked area for bus transportation. I know that the fine folks from DES, I miss you all very much. I know the fine folks from DES know all of the travails of this project, but I think it will be worth noting that when this project is done, and I'm going to support it as it is, that there is a significant amount of community engagement around what the long-term plan is, including the Charles Carroll Plaza and the associated complete streets plans around there.
Noted. Thank you, Councilmember Gruber.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Gruber, for adding that in and for your service on PPW the past 2 years. I hope to fill those seats in nicely. Anyone else have any questions about it? Comments, concerns? I also want to add in the having the separated bike lanes is pretty key for me as well. So if we can get some added funds in there to make that happen after the fact or before we even put this through, that'd be fantastic. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved.
I heard two people, so there's a motion in a second. What's the next thing I do here? Take a roll call, right? Or do
All
a
in
vote?
favor.
All in favor?
All in favor, please
Yeah.
say aye.
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 Anyone say nay? The motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm first time doing this. Fantastic. Introductory number 14, bond ordinance of the city of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of 981,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of the State Street reconstruction project. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Move.
Move it.
I hear a motion and a second there. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone say nay? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 15, bond ordinance of the city of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $3,812,000 worth bonds of said city to finance water service improvements associated with the State Street Improvement Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion? And a second.
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nay? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 16, resolution authorizing the implementation and funding in the first instance of 100% of the federal aid and state Marchicelli program aid eligible costs of a transportation federal aid project and appropriating funds therefore related to the State Street reconstruction project. Ooh, awful. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion in a second?
Move it.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you. Introductory number 17, bond ordinance of the city of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $1,456,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of the Orange Street and Saxton Street Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Questions and comments? Same question
Yes,
as
please,
before.
Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you. Same question as before. What is going to be done to ensure that city residents have a chance to participate in the RPR program, resident representation being hired to do that inspection work? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. Anyone else, any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion in a second?
Move it.
Second.
Move it and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 18, appropriating community development block grant funds and authorizing an agreement relating to the Orange Street and Saxon Street rehabilitation project. Questions, comments, concerns? If not, can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 19, authorizing a professional services agreement for the Brewery Line Trail Project. Questions, comments, concerns?
Just a comment. This is a very exciting project. It's right near High Falls. And, with the announcement of the state park, I think this is going to be a great contribution to that general area. So very exciting.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about future breweries over there as well. Making it an actual brewery trail would be fantastic. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, concerns? All right. Looking for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you. Introductory number 20, appropriating funds for the Rochester Fire Department Firehouse Needs Assessment Program. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move
If
it.
not, motion, second.
Move it.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 21, amending ordinance number 2021-364 in relation to the 2021 Preventive Maintenance Northwest Group 12 project. Questions, comments, concerns? Not looking for a motion or a second.
So moved.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Aye as well, sorry. Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 22, appropriating funds from the Rochester Pure Waters District for sewer improvements associated with street improvement projects. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion in a second?
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 23, authorizing an agreement for hydraulic model simulation support services. Questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 24, authorizing an amendatory license agreement for water quality monitoring equipment located at the Livingston County Water and Sewer Authority facility. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, may I get a motion and a second?
Moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Aye for me as well. Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you. Introductory number 25. Oh, sorry. No.
Yes.
Bond ordinance of the city of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $2,300,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of the 2022 water main lining and lead service replacement project. Questions, comments, or concerns? If not, can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lupien, seconded by President Melendez. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 26, authorizing an amendatory agreement with the New York State Department of Transportation to provide snow and ice control. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I would like to say this is kind of about time that this was done, so I approve of this greatly, so thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? If not, I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Moved by President Melendez, seconded by Councilmember Gruber. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
And that concludes the Park and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, council members.
At this time, I would like to call the Public Safety, Recreation, and Human Services Committee to order, and the clerk will call the roll.
President Melendez,
Here.
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Martin,
Here.
Councilmember Pio,
Here.
Vice President Lupien.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, introductory number 27, appropriating federal forfeiture funds and amending the 2021-22 budget to purchase equipment. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I'll just make a comment that in general, I think we have to look at the entire forfeiture and seizure process. I know this isn't local to us, but I'm a no because I really think we have to raise up the fact that we're seizing citizens' property and take a look at that just on a global level.
Yes, I also agree with Vice President Lupien on this, so I will also be a no.
Okay, this item I think we'll hold in committee for further discussion. Councilmember Pio, do you want to add anything to the discussion today?
Not today.
All right, so this item will be held. Yes,
Just a-
Councilmember Patterson.
Could we, is the chief here or someone from RPD, can they speak to the source of these seized dollars and how this whole process works?
I am here. I cannot speak specifically to the source. I can tell you what our intent was to use them from. Deputy Chief Dwyer, are you here? Could you speak specifically to that?
Yes, we're using the money to purchase vehicles, and that would be vehicles from the federal government and a 3D printer and 30 police headset earpieces.
I think they were looking specifically as far as the source of these particular funds. We don't necessarily
have
track that way, do we?
No, I don't have the source of the funds, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that. We will have some further discussion on this one. Introductory number 28, amending the 2021-22 budget and authorizing agreements relating to the trauma, training, and officer wellness program. Questions, comments, and concerns?
So one of my concerns, which I have brought up, has to do with the overtime costs that we are going to be foreseeing with this training being implemented. In the answers to the questions we received, we saw that the hours for the goal is to train all sworn officers, and the prospected hours is 280 hours over a 7-week period. Would that be for each individual officer? And also, what would the overtime cost be at that rate that was listed?
I'll defer to the deputy chief on that one. I know that is a total. It's not per officer.
That covers the backfill for the officers. It's not for the training itself. It's when the officer leaves their shift to attend the training. If we need to cover the shift, that is to cover the shift so that they can respond to calls for service while the other officers are being trained. So we won't know the exact amount until we are able to schedule it and we find out if we're short on shifts based on the training. So we have this, the 72,000, which would be, that would cover us for 19 shifts each week.
Yes, so the 72,000, from my understanding, was for overtime specifically for the 20 RPD officers who would receive the train the trainer training. I'm thinking more about the other sworn officers who would also receive the training. What would be the cost of overtime for those officers?
No, the 72,000 is for the officers that are receiving the training throughout the 7 weeks. The train the trainer officers shouldn't be, we don't think they will be on overtime. This is to cover, the $72,000 is to cover the cost of the fillback for the officers to be trained. It's not the training itself, it's to cover their shifts.
Any additional questions?
I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Martin, are you talking about the overtime for the officers that the trainers will eventually train? Is that what I was hearing?
Yes, so in the proposal, it's very unclear what the overall cost would be, because from the legislation submitted, it says that the initial 72,000 would be to cover the 20 officers who would receive the trainer, and there wasn't an allocation for the amount of funding needed to cover officers' trainings who would be taking the trainings from the trainers who were previously trained. So I think there needs to be more information about the overall estimation of overtime. So I would vote to hold this.
Okay, on page 2 of the transmittal, it says the remaining $72,400 will be used as necessary to pay overtime to backfill officer shifts while they're attending training. And that would be the entire department.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Martin, I just want to make sure that all your questions were answered. Is there something that you still would like answered in
What was
writing?
that?
So in the race, thank you so much, Josanne. In the race allocation, the total being allocated to the RPD out of the $1 million is $240,000. And in the proposal we received from council from the RPD is $122,000. So I'm also curious about what the remainder of that $240,000 allocation from the raised budget would be used for.
$50,000 is for the cost of the training for Solution Point Plus. $72,400 is for the overtime to backfill, which we just discussed. On the second page of the transmittal, it shows you $26,600 is for the fringe benefits for that overtime. And then $81,000 is for a Cortico app. It's a application. It's a wellness app that we would be, that the officers' spouses, and all the department employees would be able to use. And that's the additional $81,000. And then $10,000 would be used for the wellness unit to buy advertising. And that comes to $240,000.
Thank you so much for that breakdown. And one of the questions we asked was, how come a Solution Point was used based in Texas versus services that are offered locally? And those were mostly answered, but I would like to see a cost breakdown for, let's say, a local service provider here like Rochester Regional or Strong Mental Health. What would be their cost breakdown in comparison to the $50,000 being asked for to be given to Solution Point out of Texas?
Okay.
Thank you.
We can try and get that, Councilmember Martin, but if they're not given an RFP, they have no necessarily reason to put that amount of work into it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure that that's possible. We can try.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, this is a very important piece of legislation, part of the Executive Order 203 that was submitted to the state. We talked a lot about officer wellness, so this builds upon that recommendation that came out of that report. So my hope is that we will see some good results from this. Obviously, the proof will be in the pudding, but I think this is a good first step as we seek to try to provide some check marks on getting some movement on EO 203.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Vice President Lupien?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an important benchmark that we have to make. I think it's very clear that officer wellness is a high priority and that we will see outcomes across the community when officers are trained on trauma and what it looks like in themselves and in the community. I think there's been several incidents of body cam footage where I've seen clear trauma response that hasn't been recognized. And so I support the training, and the training of this particular person, I think would be, they call it a credible messenger, someone who's been in the trenches and understands, and would be possibly better able to bring the message of mental health and wellness to the force. My question is I think I share Councilmember Martin's wonder if the entire force is going to get trained. 76,000 seems like not a lot of money to cover their positions. So maybe I'm wondering how, when the trainers, the officers who are trainers are training the force, how long is that training that the individual, the regular rank and file officer is getting?
The training is scheduled for 8 hours. It would be the regular 8-hour day.
So maybe the question is, how many officers are we planning on training this year that have taken the training? This gets confusing with the wording, but.
Okay. We would like to train the 20 officers that will become the instructors. We were hoping for March or early spring, and if this gets approved, and then those trainers would train the rest of the department. We hope to train the entire department. Ray's recommended the uniformed officers. We think it's important to get the entire department trained. Everybody is involved in responding to calls for service in one way or another. And we think it's important for the entire department to be trained in this. The only people who would need overtime would be the road patrol, because as I said, we have to backfill their positions. We can assign the plainclothes, the investigators, the administrators, we can assign them to the training without having to backfill positions and require overtime. So the overtime is only for the patrol officers who leave their shift short because they're in training. And
Okay.
we hope to get it done this spring. It's just a question of COVID and how that's gonna affect our training schedule. But if we can get through this COVID problem, we hope that we can train them in the spring. And we hope, because it's an exciting program, we're excited about it. The department's really looking into this. We've been, we've listened to the RAISE Commission. We've studied the EO 203 studies, the President's Commission on 21st Century Policing. Everybody wants the department to change, and they all want the department to get additional training in wellness and have a wellness unit. We created a wellness unit. It's up and running now. We have
I
a
just saw the Twitter account.
We have a Twitter account. We got 300 people signed up to our Twitter account within the first 5 days. So the department is really excited about this, and we would like to get it going as soon as possible, because the people are ready for it. And the department is listening to what we're being told by the community. And we would like to start taking action on this. We really would. We are doing what the community wants us to do. We are asking for we asked for this outside group because we believe if we're going to change, we need to bring people from the outside. We can't just keep training with the same people that have been training us for the last 50 years. We need somebody from the outside to present a new approach. And this group from San Antonio, the CEO from San Antonio, he worked in the San Antonio Police Department Wellness Unit for 15 years. We've only had a wellness unit for a month, but he worked in one for 15 years and he responded almost exclusively to mental health calls. He set up a whole technique. They created an HBO special called Ernie and Joe around him. If you've seen that, these are the people we're bringing in to train. They're one of the most popular top groups, most sought after groups in the country. We just think we should bring in people from the outside, just like you're looking for an outside chief, you're doing a nationwide search. We wanted somebody from the outside. That was our thinking. There's no intent not to use somebody, but we wanted to use somebody from the outside that would bring in new ideas. We've been trained for 50 to 100 years on the way we're living now, and we need to do something different. We're listening to you. If you would just let us go forward and try it, we think this would be a great program. And
I can certainly understand the skepticism. Can I just finish? Thank you. I can certainly understand the skepticism of going outside the city, and I think we've experienced the same thing in engaging Advanced Peace that was out of California. But that's a really great research-based model, and so I don't have an issue with that. My final maybe question is, this is coming out of the raise recommendations pot of 1 million, and I understand it was a raise recommendation, but is there room in the police department budget to cover this?
Yes.
Okay.
We will make it work. We will make it work. The department is behind this. We want to do this. We are looking forward to this. We just asked for the opportunity.
This came out of the raise recommendation. So we want to also demonstrate that we are following things that came out of the raise recommendation.
Right.
But I think long term, we're going to have to find ways to make this work within the existing police department. But I just want to make 2 quick points. And if I was an attorney, I would call this People Exhibit A. So there were just some officers called to a call a little while ago in which 3 people were shot, and one of them were a 3-year-old child. And I'm getting updates in real time on what's going on with that 3-year-old child. Last week, there was an officer's call where a 14-year-old was murdered in cold blood outside of a store. You just don't put back on your regular uniform and say, that didn't matter, I need to go back to work. So just as many of us are dealing with trauma, we also need to make sure that we mandate that people who are on the front lines and seeing this are dealing with this, because they go back home and have to deal with the other things too. So this is something that has widespread support, particularly on city council. This was something that council pushed for. We had 2 representatives from council on the raise recommendation team. We had 2 council members on the executive order 203 recommendation team. So this is really carrying out work, not only with the broader community, but also work that council has also endorsed. And at a time when we are seeing some of the most horrific things I've seen since I've been living in Rochester, it is now more important than ever that officers have access to mental health guidance, and that it's done with somebody who is a credible messenger with them to talk about the travesty of things that they are seeing, so they can deal with that. Just like we all need to deal with our stuff, we also need to make sure that police officers are equipped to deal with their stuff.
And I want to make sure that in no way do I disagree with that. I think my concern is that, we only have $1 million in the raised pot. Understand that we can increase that, but this is taking up a quarter of it. And if, knowing that we've had, some staffing underruns in the police department, if there is underrun in that department, I'd like to see it come out of that money and be able to reserve, the raise recommendations for maybe departments that don't have the money to enact some of the recommendations.
Yes, and I would also like to echo Vice President Lupien's comments. I also believe that we do need an outside person doing this work, and an outside person could come from this community. I also think that having other police officers doing this training kind of challenges that notion that an outside person is going to be doing this training. So I'm just wondering why there really isn't truly an outside strategy of someone who has experience in mental health training, who is a licensed mental health professional, directly giving this training to officers who are impacted by trauma. I also am concerned about the vicarious trauma as a therapist myself that other police officers will experience by giving this training to other traumatized police officers. So those are some of the things I'm thinking of. I do believe everyone needs wellness services, all our frontline workers, teachers, first responders. We all need wellness services. So I do support having access to those services. My only concerns, once again, is the sustainability aspect of this, the overtime concerns, and possibly looking within our community to fill this role.
Well, I don't know if we actually have an estimate, but I would imagine it's cost prohibitive. So we'll be paying these individuals to come in and do train the trainer to train our 20 officers. If we were to have them here for the 7-week training period, I would expect it would cost 7 times more. Do we actually have an estimate or any idea what that would be if we were to do that, Deb?
No, sir, it would be cost prohibitive. I don't recall the numbers. We looked into it several months ago. And to pay somebody to teach us for 7 weeks, that would be quite an expense.
I would like to invite Councilmember Patterson, followed by Councilmember Lightfoot to chime in.
Thank you. So first, Councilmember Martin, I appreciate your comment, and I certainly appreciate your perspective and your professionalism. You are a subject matter expert, and so what you're saying carries a lot of weight. I guess for me, so let me ask the police some questions quickly and kind of get to my comment. So there was a comment about overtime costs. You know, I imagine right now every officer in the RPD is well into the overtime. How extensive is our use of overtime at this point in time, given our staffing shortages in the RPD?
So with our current staffing shortages, I'll give it to you in terms of hours, because we usually track overtime in hours because officers can take it in either time in their banks or cash. However, on any given day to staff patrol, we are paying between 10 and 15 8-hour blocks of overtime. And we're currently still not staffing all of the car beats that we're structured for, simply because it's a little bit slower, it's cold out, and we were to the point where we were ordering officers to stay for 16-hour shifts repeatedly. So we're trying to cut down on the amount of time that officers are ordered to stay, because obviously that's a wellness issue. So supervisors have the discretion, depending on circumstances for what they're looking at, to maybe not staff all their car beats on any given shift. So there's an ebb and flow depending on the day of the week, the weather, expected events, and so on. But on average, 10 to 15 8-hour blocks every 24-hour period are filled with overtime.
And that is significantly more than $72,000?
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah. We're estimating we will overrun our budget for the year very soon.
Okay. So even though we have shortages in staff, there are no excess dollars to be had. As you just said, we're getting ready to blow through our budget for the year, and it's January for the RP.
Yeah, correct. I mean, if you took the salaries that would be paid for the 71 vacancies and put that back in, obviously that would be, would go toward it, but we're still paying much more than that.
Okay. So
Councilman, if I could just clarify the answer there. We're not about to overrun the RPD budget in January. I think what the chief is talking about is specifically the overtime budget.
Correct.
The overall RPD budget will not overrun in January.
Well, yay! So, so that's really good to hear. Okay, so we are getting ready to blow through the overtime budget. And we still have, for all intents and purposes, 5 months to go in the fiscal year. Mr. Wagner, where are we at? So where are we at relative with our budget for RPD? Are we in a halfway decent shape, or is it looking kind of rough?
No, it's a very tight situation with RPD's budget. Right now, we are projecting that they could overrun their budget unless something changes.
Okay, so just to maintain what we have, we're looking at probably spending more than we've budgeted all the way through.
Yes, unless something changes, they would likely overrun their budget.
Fair enough. Good to know. So when we received this item, you know, they said the name of their principal, and I gave this guy a look. And to Councilmember Martin's point, he is not a mental health professional, not by any stretch of the imagination. But what he is empathetic. What he is a credible messenger. What he is he and his partner are actually two gentlemen who have diagnosed mental health issues, who can come in and I believe because of the work that they've done, because of the trauma that they have experienced, they can come in the room with a bunch of officers and have conversations that these folks are never going to have with a clinician, because a clinician's never walked that walk. To Councilmember Lightfoot's point, over the last couple of years, one of the biggest sources of death for first responders is suicide. These folks are trained to be rugged individualists. They're trained to keep it in. They're trained to swallow it. And what this gentleman does is he starts out with, man, everybody should go to therapy. He's a first responder and he's saying to him, everybody should go to therapy. But especially we need to go to therapy as first responders, because you see a lot, you deal with a lot, and you take it home and you don't know how to unpack it. And he talks about the fact that, you know, you literally have to grab these guys by the hand and walk them to the door, possibly sit in the room when they first do therapy. He's, you know, and you know, Councilmember Martin, you know way more about this than I do, so I'm not going to pretend to try and tell you that I know better, because I don't. But if we're looking at this from a perspective of empathy, if we're looking at this from the perspective of a credible voice, I would hope that you would see some value in that. I would hope that everybody in this body would see some value in that and understand that it takes a whole lot of work to get people to uncross their arms and listen. And I think this gentleman and his team, him and his partner have the ability to do that. So it's my hope that this committee won't feel a need to hold this one up. You know, it is my hope that we can move this item forward tonight and get this man in this place and talking to these folks. Now, you said, so to the chief and deputy chief, you guys said that the trainers are going to get the training for 8 hours. Then they're going to turn around and they're going to train the rank and file. How much training time are the rank and file going to get initially? And is there room for follow-up?
I'm going to refer your question to Commander LaFave, who's been planning this, and he made the arrangements, but I believe it's 3 days. They will have 3 days of training, Councilman.
Okay.
But I'd like to turn it over to Jeffrey LaFave.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everybody. So Ernie and Joe, the trainers from Solution Point, will be here for 3 days to train our trainers. One of the unique things is that a lot of places that I've looked into, they're not big into customization. They want to do what they want to do because they feel like their product's really good. Solutions Point is willing to sit down with you and tailor to the needs of your department or your agency. And what they also do is that they provide like during care. So while we're rolling out the actual training, they also offer consultation hours once they leave and they've trained the trainers. So each week they'll designate hours to our trainers to give on, live feedback on how things are going, so that if something needs to be addressed, they're there to support them along the way. And then at the end, there's a an assessment that they assist with down the road. Because one of the things that we're doing is this is not a one and done, throw this on the heap and it's over with. We're changing our mindset. We're changing the way that we do things around here. And this is basically our grand opening to say, not only were you going out to get the best in the business, we care about you and we're bringing you the best because things are going to change. And this is the map of how we're going to do it. And that's why we want to get these guys in here, because they are simply the best.
So if I may, really quickly, I'll just say that I don't know that we can move this out of committee tonight, but I wanted to see if Councilmember Martin, Councilmember Lupien, Councilmember Pio would support moving this out of committee. If not, I will hold it and we'll have some additional discussion. But where are we at?
I would like to hold and just do a little bit more research and possibly continue conversation with the administration.
Okay, so Councilmember Lupien, or Vice President Lupien, sorry.
Thank you. I am supportive of this. I don't think it hurts us to wait a couple of days and have more discussion internally.
Okay, so what I will do is I will hold this with the intention of bringing it out of committee on Tuesday. And hopefully between now and Tuesday, we can all get our answers and continue the dialogue, continue to understand this and ask additional questions. Is that fair?
That's fair, but let's maybe be clear. I have absolutely no idea what the other additional questions are. So I hope that Ms. Reeves was able to capture them so we can adequately make sure that we're answering any questions in terms of in an intelligent way. Some of them may be philosophy in terms of whether or not we do external or internal or local or national. But I just want to be clear that the team won't be sent on a wild goose chase and we'll have answers to questions. And if people just want to vote no, I think they should just vote no. But we want to make sure that we can intelligently answer people's questions.
So again, President Melendez, the only actual question that wasn't answered was, can we get a cost estimate of a local firm that could provide these services, which was by Councilmember Martin. The other ones were answered, and then there were philosophical discussions. So I'm not sure if discussions are going to happen. I mean, that's up to you. Knowing Monday is a holiday and City Hall's closed, you would have to have those discussions tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you very much. So I'm going to move us along. Introductory number 29, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds, amending the 2021-22 budget, and authorizing an agreement relating to International Plaza improvements. I'll state first that I will be abstaining for any discussion on this matter, but I'll open it up to other council members. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, then I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 I abstain. Motion passes.
You're muted, Hazel.
Sorry. The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 301 into the record with President Melendez abstaining.
Introductory number 30, authorizing a professional services agreement for the youth basketball training program. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll take a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 31, authorizing an agreement with the County of Monroe for the U.S. Justice Department grant for improving the criminal justice response to sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll take a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 32, authorizing an agreement for the Stop Violence Against Women Grant Program. Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, I'll take a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 33, appropriating ARPA funds, amending the 2021-22 budget and authorizing an agreement for COVID response and vaccination incentives. Questions, comments, and concerns?
My only comment is I would like to see more funds go to this.
My comment is I would like to see less funds go to this.
Okay. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Nay.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 3-1 into the record with council member Pio voting no.
Introductory number 34, appropriating American Rescue Fund Plan funds, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds, amending the 2021-22 budget and authorizing an agreement relating to the Healthcare Workforce Resiliency Program. Questions, comments, and concerns?
Like to repeat my last comment. I'd like to see more money go to this.
Okay, can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 35, amending ordinance number 2021-368 in relation to Society for the Protection and Care of Children Services for the Comprehensive Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program. Questions, comments, and concerns? I get a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0 into the record.
Introductory number 47, authorizing an agreement for investigations case management software. Questions, comments, and concerns, and actually, before we get that, I would like to give Director Reynolds an opportunity, as this came in as a statement of necessity today, very late, so just to address the council.
Of course. Thank you, President Melendez. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. PAB has been looking at case management software for a number of months. We work with our consultants, SMK Consulting, to receive demonstrations and quotes from 3 leading firms. There's a very small number of firms that actually do this kind of software for us. The initial thought was to procure this through an existing state contract. It wouldn't necessarily require council approval, so that was where we were in October and November. Turned out at the last minute that we found out that some component of this is cloud-based, which makes it software as a service, which does require it to require a professional services agreement. So we came to the administration, sat down at the end of December, talked about how we could address some of these concerns, pulled things together. And I think that between the transition and the beginning of the year starting, we just missed some deadlines to get it in as a tweener. So I just want to thank City Council staff and Katie for working to get this turned around today, including folks in the finance department and on the administrator's side of things in the law department. So I'm happy to answer any questions about process or about the substance of why we need case management software.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to know like more about the software and how it would be used and how it would support people who are doing the case management, like what information would be stored in it and just its general function.
Yes. So, unfortunately, with lots of police accountability boards across the country, people do case management using like Excel, right? So that's how Albany does it. And that's a great way not to have secure ways of storing information. It's also a case management system that's just for recording complaints. PAB is doing far more than just recording complaints. We have to take in all sorts of different reports of information, have intake from not just people calling in, but people walking in, people having web forms, emails, letters, everything. You need a system that can kind of hold and process all those complaints in an efficient way. But more importantly, you need software that can allow investigations to unfold. So every investigatory agency, whether it's a police department or a prosecutor's office, uses some kind of software to manage the process of investigations, store evidence, documents, allow for supervisor review, allow for the tracking of different stages of the investigative process, and most importantly, for quality control. PAB is going to be a place that gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of complaints every year, launches hundreds of investigations. And so to have a comprehensive system that can operate through a browser, that can allow for mass storage of information, and most importantly, do it all in a very secure manner that allows for integration with the FOIL process, is just top priority for us. This is a best practice that we've learned from across the country. This is what agencies like ours need, is some case management software like this.
Thank you. Any additional questions? So I have a comment. Given that this was just received today, and the body just received it, late afternoon, we will be voting on this in the Tuesday meeting, but I have the intention of holding it here just to allow questions and fairness of council members and making sure that we do our due diligence in advance of the Tuesday meeting.
I just want to say that makes so much sense. And, asking for messages of necessity is not something PAB enjoys or wants to do. And we hope to prevent this from happening again.
Those questions can go through me, not Josanne, just to clarify.
Yes, please send any questions to Katie directly. Okay, this concludes the business of the Public Safety, Recreation, and Human Services Committee. We are adjourned. At this point, I would like to call the Committee of the Whole to order.
Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Lightfoot, Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Pio,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Vice President Lupian,
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
So at this time, we have 3 introductories before the Committee of the Whole. Given that we just had the confirmation hearings this afternoon, and we just, as a body, received the resumes really in the last 24 hours, what I would like to propose is that we do hold the following introductories in committee, which we will be bringing out for discussion and a vote on Tuesday, barring any red flags that we have. So I'll read them off. Introductory number 41, resolution confirming the appointment of the Commissioner of Recreation and Human Services. Introductory number 42, resolution confirming the appointment of the Commissioner of Environmental Services. And introductory number 43, resolution confirming the appointment of Corporation Counsel. So with that, the Committee of the Whole is adjourned.
Public hearings are on this link, so we can begin them whenever everyone is ready.
Let us proceed.
Let us do this.
Just give me one moment, please. Welcome to our public hearings. The meeting will come to order and the clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Lightfoot, Councilmember Martin,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Pio,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Vice President Lupian,
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us tonight for tonight's public hearings. The hearings will be broadcast live on our City Council YouTube channel, as well as on City Channel 12. Due to the state Senate bill signed into law by Governor Hochul on September 2nd and the increased COVID-19 cases in our region, City Council is not conducting in-person meetings through mid-January 2022. In an effort to provide individuals with increased access to public hearings, we have provided the public with 2 ways to participate tonight. Individuals were able to send comments in writing via email or directly to the council email. We will now begin the public hearings.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: authorizing a grant application relating to the CARES Act Community Development Block Grant Funding for rehabilitation of affordable rental housing. Introductory number 7. Any person desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard. President Melendez, there are no speakers.
If there are no more speakers, that hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of 10 through 10.5 Jones Avenue. Introductory number 10. Any person desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard. There are no speakers for that hearing.
If there are no speakers, that hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of properties on Merchants Road. Introductory number 11. Any person desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard. There are no speakers.
If there are no speakers, the hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the zoning map by changing the zoning classification of 350 Benton Street. Introductory number 12. Any person desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard. There are no speakers signed up for that hearing.
If there are no more speakers, that hearing is closed. That concludes our public hearings. The legislation for these hearings will be voted on at our City Council meeting on Tuesday, January 18th at 7:30 p.m., which will be streamed live on our YouTube channel as well as on City Channel 12. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Night.